really shouldn't want to be a used car salesman for your own brand as a creative. You should want to be an authentic version of whatever you're trying to create, whatever brand you're trying to establish, and that should feel very true to you. You shouldn't feel like you're lying to your audience. Like, you have to give yourself permission to be authentic. Do that. Fear will definitely be along for the ride as you do that. You just can't give it permission to drive. Hey, what's up? Diet Sugar here with another long form video for y'all. Today I wanted to talk about why I think it's important to lean into authenticity in a digital world as a creator. Something that I've struggled with in the past is feeling like I'm just kind of blending in with other producers when I do things like just posting your beats on Instagram. You see a lot of producers doing that. It's just kind of like the best approach when you don't really know what you're doing. I think authenticity is important to stand out. We'll talk a bit about embracing authenticity in this episode, and next episode we'll dig in deeper. So before we get any further, I do want to encourage you, if you enjoy written content, to check out the newsletter. That's where these videos, the content for these videos actually drops a couple weeks before the videos come out. And if you're into just smaller bite-sized pieces, feel free to follow me on Instagram or connect with me on Twitter. If you do like the visual content, consider subscribing to the YouTube channel. This episode is really going to be about the benefits of just being yourself and being authentic with who you are as a creative, and building your brand around that specifically. All right, so let's get into it. Let's connect last week to this week. In the last episode, we talked a lot about storytelling, emotion, and some of the parallels that exist across different creative works when you approach them with a view of the big picture of what you're trying to create. And in this episode, like I mentioned, I wanted to talk about authenticity and the importance of that as it relates to thriving in a digital world. The gem that I'll share that kind of kicks off this topic: when you embrace authenticity, I think you become the most marketable version of your own brand as a creative, especially if you're operating as a sort of a single person business model where the brand is really around you. And in last week's episode, we talked about how your job as a creator, as it relates to storytelling, is to tell a story that evokes an emotion from the audience that's consuming that story. By being able to do that, you become a better creator and you're able to connect with your audience on a deeper level. We also talked about, if you wanted to do that powerfully, you have to take risks with emotion. You have to allow yourself to be vulnerable with what you choose to create and to kind of lean into that intuitive space. I hinted last week a little bit, one of the best ways that you can do this is just to allow yourself to be yourself and to really create what you want to create and to focus on the story that you want to tell. I'll start this week with a question. What does it mean to let ourselves be ourselves? What does it mean to embrace authenticity in our own work as creatives? How does that impact what we make? To me, it's pretty simple. To embrace authenticity, you need to allow yourself to be yourself. And so to lean into that, I think we can take it a step further and say that it means to allow yourself to express what you feel and to allow yourself to be inspired by the things that inspire you, and to not reject those inspirations or to reject your own tastes, but rather to explore them. We'll dig into what it means to explore them over the course of this episode and the next one. Before we get any further than that, I want to talk about the last episode and close that out a bit further. So I mentioned that emotion is one of the most powerful things that you need to convey as a creator. And it's really the core element of the story, is the emotional ramps that you're taking the audience through. I've been in a situation where I've had to mix vocals for a track and the emotion just wasn't there, and it doesn't feel right, and it's very hard to finish that kind of work because I can't do anything about it as the mixer. I can't automate that. I can't automate the emotion that someone needs to feel during a performance. And as a mixer and as a producer, you have a bunch of tricks that you can use. You know, you've got all of the tools: EQ, compression, saturation, whatever. You can try to automate the dynamics of a phrase. You can try to automate the dynamics of a section. But I can't create emotion in a voice that doesn't already have it. The exact same way that I can't change the emotional feel of guitar part in a song. It's either there or it's not. I bring that up because you shouldn't try to automate those things. That shouldn't be something that you just do, oh, we'll fix it in post. You can't do that. It has to be there from the beginning. Why I think this is so important is because if it's there and it's authentically there, you can feel it as an audience. someone consuming the art. And this carries across time. There was this one time where I was in a museum in Spain, and I was looking at these paintings called black paintings by an artist named Francisco Goya. And the paintings are very raw and they are very dark. They're called the black paintings because they represent a very dark time in Spain's history, and you can pick up on that when you see them in person. You just feel it in the brushstrokes and the darkness of the oil pigment and the fear that's painted into some of the eyes of the characters in the paintings. These paintings are old, they're not new paintings, but you can still feel that emotion that exists, that was captured and that was put into that. And that emotion is what's so important as a storyteller, to capture that, to capture it in a raw form and to convey it. So with that in mind, with the concept that emotion is going to stand the test of time, and that if you put it into your work and it's there authentically, the audience is going to pick up on it and they're going to feel what you convey them to feel. Let's talk about what does that mean, right? What does that mean for us as producers? What does that mean for us as artists? What does that mean for us as songwriters? What does that mean for us as content creators? Let's talk about it from the lens of a music producer. As a music producer, what this means is that your goal should be to create a canvas that allows that emotion to be expressed. So when you create an instrumental, you still need to express a story arc. You may not have the vocals there, but if you want the story to feel sad at certain moments, you can do that with production tricks. You can do that with the timbres of sound that you choose to pick, with the colors, if you will, that you choose to use, the saturation of those colors, the textures. This is really easy to understand if you think about it from horror films. Those creepy sounds that are used in horror films are used for a reason, because they create tension, they create a feeling of unease. The people that choose to use those when they're scoring, they're doing it intentionally because they're trying to convey what's already presented in that canvas. And as a producer, if you take that same concept of using the right sounds and using the right textures for the emotion that you want to try to convey in the instrumental, you're empowering an artist to pick up on those things, which is going to empower them to express their own story that resonates with what's already there on the canvas. Another thing that's important as a music producer and as it relates to authenticity is that you need to have your own sound. You need to have a signature of sonics. You need to have a signature of groove. You need to have a signature of arrangement, composition, the things you choose to include, the things you choose to not include, the sounds you choose to use, the textures that you choose to use. If you always want to make creepy shit, find creepy textures and make songs that feel dark, make songs that feel angry, if that's what you want to express. In order to do that, you need to curate what you want to use. You need to curate from your inspirations, from your own tastes. For example, I really like Murder Beats. His production is super dope. I really like Pierre Bourne. I really like Metro Boomin. Those are producers that inspire me with what they create. I love the grooves that they create. I love the sounds they choose to use. I like the way that it makes me feel when I listen to a song that they've produced. And so I pull from those decisions that they're making to inform my own decisions. I don't try to copy them, but I pull from them. I try to understand their wisdom as a creative. And that's what it means to use a reference. It doesn't necessarily mean to copy, it means to be informed by someone else's decisions. Don't try to copy from your influences and from your references. Focus on being informed by their decision and their wisdom as a creator. And the more that you do this, the more that you curate, the stronger your referencing is going to be. And we'll talk about that in the next episode. It's a longer subject than I can put in this episode with what we're already going to be talking about. So that's what I think it means as a producer. So let's talk about it from an artist's perspective. From an artist's perspective, I think what it means is that you need to allow yourself to express emotion, to be authentic in that. It also means that you should curate to be authentic. The artists that inspire you, the songwriters that inspire you, the producers that inspire you. If you like a specific type of beats and that's what you gravitate towards, think about why. Ask yourself, is it because of the way they make you feel? Is it because of the arrangement style that's used? Is it because of the sounds that are used? And the more that you understand that, the more authentic your own work is going to be. Because the more that you empower yourself to just stay in that intuitive space, the more you're allowing yourself to express emotion naturally, organically, raw. the more you're allowing yourself to be vulnerable when you create. The more you're allowing yourself to tell a story rather than focus on the technicalities. The gem that I'll share is as an artist, as a producer, whatever, just try to enjoy the process of creating, because that's the whole point, is just to create. Don't worry so much about the outcome. Just focus on being present in that moment and expressing whatever you want to express in that moment. And you can do this in so many different mediums. You can do this in audio, you can do this in video, you can do this in silence, you can do this in painting, whatever it is. And what I would ask you to do if you're an artist is to think about the songs that have stuck with you throughout your life. Think about them. Just, can you name them? For me, one of my favorite songs of all time is Hurt. Originally by 9 Inch Nails and then covered by Johnny Cash. It's just such a powerful song. I love it. I love the pain that exists in those lyrics and the way that it's conveyed, the vocal that Johnny Cash put on it, the textures that 9 Inch Nails used. It kind of always brings me back to a feeling of deep melancholy, and it's not surprising given that the name is Hurt. That song has a special place in my life because of the emotions that it invokes, the emotions that it makes me feel. I think about that sometimes when I'm making music, because I don't necessarily want to copy what is in that song, but I want my music to be able to resonate with someone else like that. Which means that as an artist or a producer or a content creator or mixing engineer, whatever, the creative, someone working in a creative field, embrace the emotion that you feel when you listen to something. If you're listening to a beat as an artist and it makes you feel sad, just go with it. Talk about something that makes you express that. If you're mixing a song and there's a moment that makes you feel upbeat and happy, you have tools that allow you to express more of that. And we'll talk about that also in a couple of later episodes around storytelling. But the most important thing that I'll say as a takeaway, that's specifically as an artist, you cannot automate the emotion in post-production. It's got to be there from the very beginning, which means it has to come from within you, which means you have to allow yourself to express it, which means you have to allow yourself to be vulnerable in expressing that. You have to allow yourself to want to create something that is powerful. Spend some time curating instrumentals that make you feel a certain way. Spend some time listening to music that makes you feel a certain way. And remember those feelings and then express them later in your own work. That's as much of a referencing technique as anything else. As a creator, it's really easy to get caught up in a trend. And this is why I didn't really enjoy trying to run a type beat channel, because I don't want to just follow a trend. I don't want to have to always be studying a trend. It's useful to know what's out there as a trend and to let that inform you, because that helps you stay up to date. But to let it dictate is a different thing. I'll kind of counter that pressure, the external pressure, with an internal pressure a lot of times in my own work. The authenticity that comes from exploring what you want to create and creating what you want to create, that allows you to build a stronger brand that's unique to you. And a stronger brand is going to resonate more deeply. It's going to stand the test of time more deeply. So let's talk about Yeet. Right? He's an absolute trap god at this point. He's created a whole new wave of synthetic trap that is breaking a lot of the rules that exist in the genre, and they're kind of just doing their own thing. They don't give a fuck about conventional trap. It's a totally new wave, and that's dope. That's what happens in music. That's what happens in art. Something comes along to disrupt the course that it's following, and people like it because it's new, it's fresh, it's different, but it's also familiar. That authenticity that he's built, just kind of following his own path and finding a style of music that he really likes and exploring that, has helped him build a huge following. And it probably seems like it happened overnight, but it really didn't. He's been doing it for a long time. And the gem that I can take away from looking at that is that it just break the fucking rules. As a creative, break the rules. It doesn't matter. Fuck it. Fuck rules. They're the most pointless thing as a creative. Because if you think of a trend as a rule to follow, it's gonna work until it doesn't anymore. And if you're always chasing that, if you're always chasing the trend, you're not really exploring who you are as a creative. You're exploring what the world sees as popular. And that is great if that's what you want to do. If that's what you want to do, do it. But for me, it's not what I want to do, which is why I tend to make experimental stuff. Because I like experimenting. I like breaking the rules. And I mentioned that I have tried to start a type beat channel and got kind of tired of that. And it's purely because I didn't want to try to study the rules and the references of the artists who are at the top of the search, like hype, basically. Because not many of them resonated with me. There's a lot of producers that can do that, that choose to do that, that it works really well for them. I'm not saying to change that. If it's working for you, keep doing it. But I'm saying if you don't resonate with that approach, there's another approach for you. And that's just be your fucking self and do whatever the fuck you want to do. Because why not? Because at the end of the day, it's important to find your own voice as a creative. Otherwise, at the end of your career, you're going to look back and you're not going to really know what you stood for. And to me, that would just be a failure at the end of it all. To have spent a lifetime creating stuff and then to look back and not really like enjoy any of it. It means I was rebelling against my own tastes, and that's pointless. So I think it's crucial to establish a vision and to follow it. And let's talk about a couple of ways that you can do that. The first is just to ask yourself the question, what is your vision? Do you even know what the answer is to that? Because your vision is pretty much everything as a creative. It's the end goal of what you're trying to do. If you don't have that, why are you even trying to create anything? And once you establish that vision, then you need to set boundaries around it and protect it. You need to protect your time so that you can pursue it. You need to protect the aesthetic so that it remains true to you. The next piece of advice that I have, and this relates to guiding principles, is to set core values. One of my core values is growth, both in life and as a creative. And this core value means to grow and to keep learning and to evolve over time. That core value, that single core value, allows me to experiment. Not even allows me, it empowers me to experiment, to learn new things, and that makes me want to share those new things. And another core value of mine is knowledge, because I'm curious. That's just the end. That's as simple as it has to be. To do this exercise for yourself, to try to set core values for yourself, you can look up a phrase, value cards sort. I'll put a link in the description of this video that does the Google search for you in case you don't know how to use Google. There's a list of cards. They all have different words on them. Just read them. Spend 30 minutes doing this. Read through those cards and pick the ones that resonate with you. That's it. Those can be your core value. You don't have to pick many of them. You can pick 5, you can pick 2, you can pick 1, whatever. You can pick all of them if you want. I'm not your babysitter. Once you finish picking those, then ask yourself again, what's your vision? And when you can answer that question, then understand if the core values that you picked and the vision that you stated, are they aligned? Because if they're not aligned, you need to understand why. You need to ask yourself that question. So if a core value is growth, but you choose to only make music in one specific genre and you choose to never explore past that, why? Be curious about your own tendencies. Because the gem that I'll share is that the values and vision of your brand have to be in alignment. And if they're not in alignment, it's not going to be good for you as a creative. You're not going to be fulfilled by your own work. And that's totally pointless to pursue work that's unfulfilling to you. This is why I suggest embracing authenticity and rejecting originality. We'll talk about that in the next episode. That's probably a controversial opinion. I think if you choose to follow trends, if you choose to be pressured by external forces, you're rejecting your own authenticity, and that leads to unfulfilling work. I think that also leads to a lack of authenticity in your own brand, and people can pick up on that. So what I would suggest you do is that you focus on establishing a vision, you focus on establishing core values for yourself and your brand, and then you let yourself create in a way that is in alignment with them. I think that's going to make you stand out. I think that's going to make you more fulfilled in your life and in your creative work, which overall is going to make you more happy and more willing to do the work on a daily basis, because this shit isn't always easy. There's days that I wake up that I don't want to do this because it's just easier to do something else. Having a guiding principle allows you to motivate yourself, and setting goals allows you to motivate yourself. We talked about that in a previous episode. So those are the dangers of external pressures. Let's talk about the benefits now of embracing authenticity. I've already mentioned a few of them, and I'll start this section off by talking about a book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. This book is focused on the concept that the things that we give a fuck about are often most not what's important. A lot of the times they're not even worth our time and energy, and we choose to give a fuck about them. There's an art to not giving a fuck. It's a choice that you have to make. It's a skill that you have to practice. And I think you should keep this in mind as a creator. The art of not giving a fuck as a creator. The art of doing what you want to do as a creator. I think this empowers you to embrace your own authenticity, because who the fuck cares if something is a trend? If you don't want to do it, don't give a fuck about it. One of the benefits of embracing authenticity, honestly, the benefit of embracing not giving a fuck and just creating what you want to create, is you're going to make stuff that's more true to you. And if you do that, people are going to notice. Your engagement is going to go up. You won't stress so much about what you're creating because you just want to create it anyways. That's going to lead to you having more fun. That's going to lead to you having a more fulfilled work-life balance. That's going to mean that you want to do the work because you're enjoying it. And I think as someone working in a creative field, this allows you to carve a lane for yourself. I'll share a little bit about myself. One of my favorite producers is Flume. I just really love so much of his work. The textures that he uses, the sounds, the storytelling aspect of the songs, the storytelling aspect of an album, the approach to minimalism that's at the same time incredibly complex. There's so many sounds that he uses that you can tell they're just a preset with like OTT on it if you know the preset. And that to me is truthfully not giving a fuck. It's studying a reference of pop music, choosing to compose in that arrangement style, and then choosing to break as many rules as he can along the way. And not really fucking caring. He's just doing it just to do it. And he talks about this in interviews, that he just does shit just to see what happens, and cool stuff happens. And then he's like, okay, cool, the engineer can deal with making this sound good. I don't have that luxury because I do all of my own mixing, but I like the spirit of it. I take that with me. And another thing that I like about his work is that it's constantly evolving. And you can listen to every album that he's made, and they don't really sound the same. There's specific qualities about them, the synths that he chooses to use, that carry through, that again is like one of his signatures, but I guarantee you he got those things from a reference. He's not the first person to detune saw waves. He's just not. But he's always been an inspiration to me because he creates music that seems true to himself. Even the stuff that I don't really like, I still respect. This is something that's also been true in my own work. When I've worked on projects with other people and different collaborations where they allowed me to express my own ideas and explore my own ideas and kind of give me more freedom to just run as a creative, I love that. It's empowering, it's fun. On the flip side, when I'm working with somebody that doesn't let me do that, I don't have nearly as much fun. This always makes me feel like, why am I doing this? And so I'll leave you with that same thought. This is a bit of a tough pill to swallow, but if you're working with somebody that doesn't let you express your own ideas, don't work with them anymore. It's not worth your time. It's not worth your energy. It's frankly not worth theirs either. To just tie a bow on the benefits of embracing authenticity, let's talk about Tyler, the Creator. He is one of the easiest examples that I can think of someone that's authentic. In his music, the comedy that he used to create, just the way that he handles himself in interviews, whatever. It kind of just seems like he does whatever the fuck he wants to do, and I love that because it seems like the thing that he gives a fuck about is being true to himself, and that's a really good thing to give a fuck about. The gem that I'll leave for this section is just make whatever the fuck you want. Embrace that. Embrace the authenticity of doing that. As a creator, you have that power. Fucking explore it. But you may not know how to do that, so let's talk about some practical tips. Some practical tips for embracing authenticity. Know what you want and go for it. Establish that vision, set core values. Protect your time and energy because you need to create more than you need to worry about what's going on externally. Be honest with yourself about your own strengths and your own weaknesses and your own tastes. It's okay to create things that you're not happy with. The important thing is just to own your shit and figure it out because you can't expect another person to do that work for you. Seek out opportunities to learn, to collaborate, whatever. And then find other people that work in the same field as you that you are inspired by, that attract you. Because there's something about them that resonates with who you are, and the more that you do that, the more you're going to be authentic with yourself. Those tips apply to anyone that's a creator. Content, music, painting, writing, whatever. Specifically with audio, it can be very difficult to quote-unquote find your sound because your music should reflect your tastes, not someone else's. This is true as a producer, this is true as an artist, this is even true as a mixing engineer. If you didn't have good taste, you wouldn't want to create. This doesn't mean that you can't let your own taste be informed by someone else's taste, but this means that you don't need to copy someone else's taste to find your own. We'll talk more about this in the next episode. And I know that the creative journey is a tough one. It's one that I struggle with sometimes. Embracing authenticity isn't the thing that's gonna go like, cool, I wanna do this every day of my life. Because the thing that's gonna do that is your own willpower. You still have to be the person that can tell yourself, let's keep going. But also find other people that remind you to think that way. So let's talk about connecting it all together. Authenticity is key, direction is key. Create your own lane if you have to create your own lane. The tough pill to swallow that I'll leave you with is that you really shouldn't want to be a used car salesman for your own brand as a creative. You should want to be an authentic version of whatever you're trying to create, whatever brand you're trying to establish, and that should feel very true to you. You shouldn't feel like you're lying to your audience. You have to give yourself permission to be authentic. Do that. Fear will definitely be along for the ride as you do that. You just can't give it permission to drive. And that's it for this week's episode. Next week, we'll be talking about a deeper dive into authenticity and why I think you should reject originality and instead really lean into being authentic. And we'll talk about some specific techniques of how you can do this. So we'll go deeper into the techniques, we'll go deeper into the practical advice, we'll go deeper into the more powerful techniques that you can use to really understand what it is to explore your own tastes as a creative. We'll talk about how you should build on top of your influences instead of pushing them away so that you can be original. How that style of referencing, when you layer influences on top of each other, specifically powerful moments, is one of the most powerful tools that you have as a creator. How doing that actually makes you more original than trying to quote unquote be original in what you're making. I'll also give a heads up, there's only a couple more episodes left in this specific series about content. After that, we'll be talking about a different subject. And that different subject is going to be around business architecture, which is something that I don't really hear a lot of people talking about when it comes to creative work, but is very important, especially if you're trying to do this stuff on your own. With that in mind, if you've been enjoying the series and you want to stay up to date as things get released, consider subscribing, hit the notification bell, like the video, leave a comment if you have thoughts, if you just want to discuss stuff. Feel free to follow me on Instagram, Twitter. You can message me anywhere. Follow me on BeatStars if you're interested in that. I do make beats. I make sample packs too. All of the links for everything of mine is in the description below. So if you're just curious, feel free to go check those out. You can download everything for free. If something really catches your eyes, or your ears, I guess, let me know about it. Always interested to hear what y'all are doing. Later. Peace.